Okay. Live on Facebook, live on YouTube. We're going.
Awesome. All
Very
right,
nice.
guys. Well, thank you for joining in today. We are live here with Mr. Rodney Barnes. Thank you, Rodney Barnes, for joining us today. And it looks like we are live.
Yeah, we're ready to go.
Ready to go.
Let's
Thank
do
you
it.
for having me.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right.
So, for those of you guys that may not know, Mr. Ronnie Barnes is a fantastic writer. He has written for TV shows like Boondocks, My Wife and Kids, Everybody Hates Chris. He's also writing comic books as well. Right now, we had Blackula right here that we have this copy right here. Just recently came out. And he also just recently came out with a new #1 from Image Comics that just released yesterday, Monarch #1. He also writes Mandalorian, Philadelphia, writes a whole lot of cool stuff. So, Mr. Ronnie Barnes, thank you so much for joining us here today. We are very pleased to have you.
Yes, for
Thank you.
sure.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Assisting me today is Amir from the 1 in 100 podcast as well. Thank you, Amir, for taking the time out of your hands to help us out with this, of course.
No problem, brother.
All right, so we're going to start off with a few questions. So, first question, when writing stories about characters that are already been created, like Mandalorian and Falcon, is it easier to write stories about characters that you created yourself or characters that have already been created?
Well, I mean, creator-owned characters, you kind of can do whatever you want to do. You don't have boundaries attached to them. I mean, certainly with Falcon, not only do you have the boundaries that are created by, the company, but also by the fan base. The things that they want to see their heroes do. And if you go too far to the left or to the right, they certainly will let you know. I learned that one. Um, and the same thing with the Star Wars universe. There are things that you can and can't do, and certainly with a property like The Mandalorian, I've had to stay incredibly strict to what the TV show is. So, creator-owned comics basically the writing part comes from me and from my heart and my head. So I have to say there's a lot more freedom when it comes to creator-owned books.
Right.
Awesome. So, whenever you write like Star Wars comics, for example, do they give you, I guess, spoilers on what would be happening in the future story to kind of refrain from?
It's different in every case. I mean, I certainly know in the case of Mandalorian, both of those, I sort of walk with the show as it goes. So we're moving in real time. Maybe something like when I did Lando Double or Nothing, I had an insight into what was going to happen in the land. I saw the movie before most people saw the movie, and I read the scripts before anybody saw the movie. So I did have some insight there because I was making up that world because it was the things that happened before the solo movie. So yeah, in some cases yes, and in some cases no.
Awesome. All right, so I read that some of your earlier Hollywood work was on the Blade film with Wesley Snipes. Would you ever consider doing anything in regards to that character again? Movie, comic books, future projects?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if they offer me something or I came up with a really great idea that they greenlit, I'd be happy to. I mean, I love Blade. I love Mahershala Ali. We're working together on another project, the Jack Johnson
Jack
project,
Johnson.
and I would love to be a part of all of that.
Real quick, I already know what I want you to work on. I need you to get on that swamp thing, man. I need
That
you
would
to
be
get on that
great.
team.
I was close. I was
Make
close.
it
I was
happen.
very, very close a couple of months back, but
Yeah.
I probably can't talk about that other than to just say I was close.
Yeah. We
So
won't
yeah,
say much more.
yeah.
Man, so earlier we were talking about Blackula. When did you realize that that was a project you wanted to make? Was it, while you were in the early works of writing Philadelphia? Was it earlier than that? Was it sooner?
When I was about 10 years old, I mean, when I first saw the movie, I was really, really young. I was younger than that. And there were parts of it that I dug, and then there were problematic parts, but the same kind of stuff that went with exploitation in general. Because I always loved the Universal monster movies, the Dracula, Werewolf, Frankenstein movies. And wanted a character like Prince Mamawaldi, aka Blackula, to sort of be as regal as Bela Lugosi was as Dracula. And, to lesser or greater degrees, he was sort of pigeonholed by the idea of blaxploitation to a degree. And I wanted to be able to give him the same kind of range and horror palette that any other monster or predator would have. And so, as I got older and had an opportunity to become a professional writer, I always said that if I ever got into comics, I'd take a crack at doing this thing. And fate kind of worked out to where I was able to.
Listen, I read it. It's an amazing story.
Thank
You
you.
and Jason, man, this team is amazing. The artwork is fantastic. Like you said, this comes from the movie, but you don't have to watch the movie in order to understand the book. The movie's awesome, but you do a great job of catching everyone up to the present time that's taking place in the story. But I have one question about
Oh,
the end of the book. I won't spoil it,
okay.
but does this somehow connect to Philadelphia in that
No,
world you're building?
I wish. No, I felt like, I've got 5 books right now that are attached to Philadelphia,
Right.
and they've got damn near every kind of monster you could think of. Zombies, witches,
Werewolves.
werewolves, vampires. Is like it's virtually. I've had a zombie in there or two, so it's like everything. So it's, the Blackula world. I'm really looking more to bring back some '70s icons that I'm talking to different studios, and to make team ups and mixing characters from the '70s that are iconic with a character that I look at as being iconic, and sort of having my own little horror fantasy thing, that's sort of the goal for Blackula right now.
Yeah, I will say I was a little sad when I didn't see that classic scene when Blackula goes to the club
He's a
and
strange dude.
yeah, with that cape he had.
Yeah. You never know. It could come. You got to go to the club first. Right now he had a mission. He had to get out of hell. He had a lot on his mind. He got to go to that. Prince Mamawaldi was in the club. He was talking to a chick.
Yeah,
This one's under a little pressure right now. The sun is coming up.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I like the backstory that's in there, man. That was really dope.
Thank you. Thank you.
Would you ever consider adapting Dr. Blythe, Mr. Hyde into a comic book?
Dr. Fibes?
It was Dr. The movie from William Crane. Was there another movie that he did? Right? It was like Mr.
Oh
Hyde.
no, I'm not as it's not as deeply rooted in that. I thought you meant Dr. Fibes, Vincent Price, which I would.
Oh yeah,
Abominable Dr. Fibes, another movie that I love from the '70s. But not that's not at the top of my mind. I mean, these adventures into getting properties aren't cheap. So and it took like 2 years to go through the legal process and all of this stuff you got to go through. So anytime you're talking about adapting something that belongs to somebody else, and it's a legacy title, it's never easy. So
Yeah,
I
that
won't
was
be doing a
actually
whole lot of.
sorry, that was actually another question that one of our employees had written in for us to ask. He was saying that basically the Blackula and the copywriting, since the character is a public domain, is it the same rule apply, with Blackula as Dracula?
Not really. No, this Blackula had to go through MGM and sign a lot of papers and give him some money. So it's not public domain. I wish Blackula was public domain, but no, it's still attached to the 1972 movie. But it would be, I wish Bram Stoker had written Blackula, and I could go back and just have public domain, but nah.
and you have it for 5 years, right?
Hmm?
You have the license for 5 years.
Yeah, I don't know where I am on that timeline. I don't know how rigid that is, and if I have to re-up or something, because it took a while for all of this to come together, and we stopped and started a couple of times. So, I'm just kind of proud that the book made it to the light of day in the first place.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to volume two for sure.
Lord willing, it's coming. We'll see how Volume One does. We'll see how many books we're able to sell, and then if it makes money and makes
Go
sense.
get it. We need volume two.
We do. We do.
All right,
I
so
got a story.
touching on your wonderful television background, the Boondocks. What was the
Mm-hmm.
process adapting something that was originally, comic strips into 4 seasons of television?
Uh, I mean, I don't think the show really is indicative of what the comic strip was. They were two kind of separate things, the same characters, but they sort of express themselves in completely different ways than the comic strip was. I mean, for me, it was like any other TV show in the sense that, you're writing provocative stories. I think the only difference for me was during that period of time, I was working on regular network TV. My wife and kids and Everybody Hates Chris at the time, and so
Classics.
you had standards and practices would come in every day and tell us what we could or couldn't do on those shows, and then you had the Boondocks, and we could seemingly do whatever we wanted to do. And so it was a completely different experience as far as just being a writer and having a joke in your head or having an idea and being able to just do it. And this was before social media too, so being able to say really, really provocative things, um, was unheard of at that time for me in my career.
So we have another question that
A little bit is really broken up.
There
Okay,
you
okay,
go.
there we go. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so this was a question that someone wanted us to ask. So, and I quote, being instrumental in the success of Boondocks, do you believe it would have been less successful if it was released today in our modern political climate, or perhaps even more successful?
I think it would be difficult to do today only because, even in the best of circumstances, you have a lot of different points of view now. I think we're in a different world. I mean, I talk to students all the time. And I had a lady ask me the other day, like, how could you write it? She said, I love the show, but it would be hard for me to write because I love African American culture so much. Like, how could you
Right.
judge it in the same way, or like how could an Uncle Ruckus exist, like how could you write that type of thing if you love black people, like,
Right.
she was at the same praising it but at the same time wondering what types of minds could actually do that. And I think it's according, I think, to how you look at satire. If you're able to love a thing enough that you can analyze it or, try to make a point through a different type of lens, that's one way. But I don't know if we've had enough of that to be able to not take it literally.
Right.
It's like, I think it's tough sometimes in today's world to look at things like satire or comedy and not take it personally or not seemingly, you're trying to make a point, but seemingly you're mocking a group or something. And it's just treading on thin ice. I just don't know what executives you could get that past, because usually that's the gate that you have to get past in order to get something on the air. And they're the filter, they're the taste test. So I don't know if you'd have to be really in a unique position to where, regardless of what you say, and bullets are going to come back the other way, that they'd be willing to take them. So
Right.
I think, for the time that we did it, it certainly was an ideal time, but I don't know how it would exist today.
Yeah.
I would love to see it. I really would love to see it,
Yeah.
because I sort of exist in that time. I grew up in a time where comedy was, there were all different types of folks. They
Right.
didn't all just kind of say one thing. And if you didn't like somebody, you just didn't see that person. You just,
Mm-hmm.
that was just, Gallagher wasn't my dude. I knew he was on, but the guy that bashed the fruit over his head, oh, okay, I see it. That's what he does.
Yeah.
I didn't say, oh, I hate him, or whatever. And so I don't know. I don't know how it would exist, but I would love to think that it could.
Yeah. I think they was trying to bring it back, right, Aaron?
Yeah, it was an effort. That was an effort for a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. Tough times right now.
Would you ever consider readapting the animated series into a comic book series?
Same issue. I mean, as long as you have words and you have stories, you have there's a degree of controversy and still and all of that that I don't know how a thing exists. So probably not would be the answer if it was on me. If it were my decision to make, probably not, but only because I'm old now. I've lost some of that venom. I've lost some of that ability to be that guy. It's still in there, but you got to make me mad, I guess, to bring it up.
Right.
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 There we go.
All right, there you go.
So going on
Go.
to the Falcon question.
Oh yeah. So going back to the Falcon, is there any other superhero character or characters you've been using in writing, whether it's Marvel, DC, Image?
Yeah, I mean, Amir knows the answer to this question. I mean, I'd love to do Swamp Thing. Everybody knows how much I love Swamp Thing. Developing a Batman story right now. Um,
Nice.
and
Exclusive right there.
yeah, so there are a few other characters I'd love to play with, but it's like the more you do indie comics and the more freeing, you exist sort of in your own bubble, make what you want to make. It's hard to go back to no, you have to do it this way or you have to work within certain boundaries.
Yeah.
Not that I can't, but it's just a lot more fun when, it's, I don't think any of us do comics to get rich. You do comics from your heart because you love them, and I love them. So if you're doing a passion thing, you want to be able to put as much passion in the thing as you possibly can. So if I'm held to the same standards that I am with television, um, it's a different experience. One I'll embrace for the right character for sure because I'm still a fanboy at heart. But if you gave me again a choice, I'd still stay within the creator-owned space.
Yeah. I would. There was two characters that I was thinking about. Luke Cage being one of them. I think with the
I
way.
had a There was a Luke Cage story that I was developing last year, and the way sometimes these things work is you get an email and they say, "Okay, this is what we want to do," and you start writing, and you don't hear anything for a long time. So you say, "Oh, this ain't gonna happen."
Yeah.
And then one day they say, "Where is it?" And then you start writing again. So I had a Luke Cage thing that they wanted me to do last year, but I haven't heard any more.
And Black Lightning was the other one. Because these, I
Yeah.
mean, this is selfishly because these are two characters that I enjoy, but they are not seen much in the comic book shows. So I know you
The
would.
stuff that I'd want to do with them, they probably wouldn't want to do it. I like taking people to hell and
Yeah,
monsters, and I don't want to just put them in the hood, But it's like I want to do things where, or at least if they are in fighting hood stories, they're fighting a werewolf, or they're
right.
fighting something that is a different phenomenon and not just social stuff.
Yeah, like
I
your
like
Falcon
this.
run.
Yeah, it's like I like to look at him and say, what's it like to have been the sidekick, and now you put on in me, I'm Captain America, and identity wise, what am I? Am I this or am I that? And I was always intrigued by that idea, and the whole thing with going to hell in the Falcon Run was about that metaphor of
Yeah,
I got to purge myself of that idea of being a sidekick in order to actually be the best hero that I can possibly be. I don't know if that landed as well as I wanted it to, but
it did with me.
that was sort of, thank you, brother. It's like that was sort of the goal at hand. And I think a lot of times because of the movies, you get a really fixed idea of who these characters are and what they should do in the worlds that they operate in. It's like Captain America and Falcon and Bucky and them, they deal with Nick Fury and Shield, and they stay in their world, and they typically don't cross streams unless they're going to team up with the Avengers and fight Thanos or maybe
Right.
Kang and whoever they're fighting. But I like to take you out of your natural element and put you in someplace else, like Batman. Like Batman could be in a horror comic or
True.
Gotham City or space, or you can take Batman and put him anywhere. And I kind of dig that about that, but I'd love to be able to do that with some of our characters as well.
Awesome, awesome. So let's talk about your new one, Monarch, a science fiction tale regarding some kid who encounter an alien invasion. How did you come up with this idea? What was your inspiration behind it?
was a lot of feedback, but I think you asked me about Monarch.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Monarch was just I wanted to, a lot of times I'll have ideas about what if this genre met this genre, and if I could mash all of these things up together, what it would look like. Um, I kind of like movies like Brother from Another Planet, and certain movies that I love the idea of them, and they evolve and they just kind of stay in my head. And if I could do a story like that, what would it look like? And I like the idea of kids having to try to figure out huge problems because they're not fully developed. And the weird thing with today's kids are, I think, less. They have to grow up quicker in some ways, but they still haven't had the same types of responsibility in other ways. I had an interview earlier this morning, and the person was pointing out that, when we were kids that were around the same age as me, like we went outside. We couldn't wait to get outside. It's like as soon as you woke up in the morning, it was you get on your bike, you're at the
Wow.
playground, you just go outside. And now my kids look at outside like danger. It's like as soon as the door opens, they like, where you taking me? You taking me
Right.
someplace. I walked to school. I played in the woods. Like
Yeah.
in today's world, I'm a victim. I'm on the first 48 or Dateline. And, I think that when you look at today's kids, in some ways, I won't use the word shelter, but I think because of technology and their phones, like you can put a GPS, it's damn near a tracker on a kid. Um, it's just a completely different world. And because the video games have sort of replaced sports
Yep.
for some kids, like it's a sport in and of itself. And there's no need to really go outside. Like theoretically, if for some kids, outside is like an unknown.
Right.
And so I wanted to place kids in a middle school on an average day that are going through just the regular problems of being kids in an alien invasion. This just happens on a
Oh.
Thursday. And what would they do? And what would happen? And some would be able to deal with it emotionally and psychologically, some wouldn't. Kind of like a Lord of the Flies type thing. But I think just trying to find out the stuff that's in us on a primal level, be it good, be it trouble, be it whatever it is, that we find our virtues under duress. And I was just intrigued. I had never written a story like that before, so I wanted to take a crack at it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, since I've been following your books and everything and reading everything that you put out, this might be like, other than the Star Wars stuff, this might be like your first like sci-fi horror thing that you're doing, man. Yeah, I like the idea of it being, a younger generation. Um, and even with the like, I don't want to spoil, but like the bullying,
Yeah,
you've dealt with
yeah.
like family issues and stuff in other stories like Philadelphia, tragic, losses in families, stuff like that, like Hall. So now you're dealing with, the younger generation now, what they have to deal with as far as like bullying and love and things like that, man. So I
Thank you,
definitely
brother.
dig it. And
I appreciate it. I'm always
definitely,
trying to show range. I'm trying to push myself as a writer to not just do. It's very easy if you have a book like Philadelphia, which is relatively well received. It's like, I'm going to just keep doing books like that. I'm going to be the vampire guy, especially after Blackula.
right.
But I wanted Blackula to feel completely different than Philadelphia. I wanted Nita to feel different than Philadelphia. I wanted Monarch to feel different than those other books. I want all of them. I don't want to get to a place where it's like, oh, okay, I know what he's going to do because in other
Yeah.
books he does this, that, or the other. I like the nature. The greatest compliment I get from Philadelphia is we don't know what's going to happen next. It's like you thought this was going to happen, and
Yeah.
I purposefully sometimes I don't even know. When I'm sitting down and writing where I'm going to go with a thing. I know the beginning and I know where it's going to end, but as I'm writing, sometimes I'll go against my own instincts to do something that I think is more organic to the characters themselves rather than what I do as a writer.
Yeah, yeah, you've broken my heart a few times.
That's the
Last
goal.
couple of issues.
Oh, if I can make you
Philadelphia.
cry, I want you to cry. I want to hurt you. That's
I've
my
been right
goal.
there, man.
There you go. I got some big ones coming too. So it's not over.
Oh man,
This way in one night. All
Get
of
your
Arc
tissue out.
5 takes place in one night. So
Right.
we've lost a lot of people. We've lost a lot. Well, we've lost a lot of vampires, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
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 Would you say that it's
Would you say
easier
that
to
it's
write from
easier to
the
write from
perspective of younger
perspective
kids
of
since
your
they're not
kids since
mature
they're
yet,
not mature yet,
or do you prefer
or do
writing
you
more
prefer writing more
established adults that
established
have
adults that have
gone through everything you were
gone
saying,
through everything you said?
all that stuff?
No, it's it's easier to write for certainly folks that I can identify with, like the Sangsters in Philadelphia were me and my father, and so it's easier to kind of reach into me and pull out like this would be a joke that I would say to my son, and this would be something my father would say to me. That's easier. But for Nita Hawes, like I would have to get women sometimes to read it and say, am I doing this woman justice? If I'm dealing with sexual orientation or something outside of the realm of what it is that, how I live my life, I don't ever want to impose my lack of knowledge or insight and just be that dude of I'm writing it and you're going to take it whichever way that I kick it out there. I want you to I want to be true to the characters themselves and the cultures that they come from and their belief systems, not mine.
But before you get to your question, I had another question about this great read. In the first Blackula movie, Prince Mama Wally was also motivated by like love. He lost
His wife.
His wife.
Nuva.
Yeah. And that was like a big part of the movie. Even when he saw the woman and he's like, "You look like my wife." So, now that he's done what he had to do in Volume 1, will he be able to,
Love somebody.
Yeah.
Um, that was actually an odd thing in the movie to me that, he could be dead for 200 years and come back and his wife's twin existed in the same place he was sent to. It was like, that's a hell of a coincidence. This could only happen in a movie. The answer is yes in dealing with love. I don't know if that particular storyline, he left hell for one purpose, which was to get revenge. And now he's got to settle into a new world, if he's going to settle into a new world. But then again, the devil's not done with him throwing things at him yet, because you don't insult Satan. So I would say the answer is closer to yes, probably, that he will deal with, there'll be some semblance of a love story there. It probably won't manifest itself in the same way that the movie did.
Okay.
All right. So, I guess this is the last question of the day. Before I ask it, I just want to let you know that we do have a whole audience of people here in our store watching this interview. I'll speak for everyone. That's
Tell them to come to the Grove. Tell them to come to the Grove Saturday. I'll sign some books for them. So I'm not just looking out to an emptiness. I'm not just looking out into a void. But yes.
But I will speak for everyone here that we really appreciate you joining in with us. So now, without further ado, I'll go with the last question. So you've written aliens, vampires, zombies, deadites. What is the next big supernatural and horrific creature that Rodney Barnes has up his radar?
Go ahead and look at that board. I know it's over.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing too. This is gonna sound crazy. I got a sea monster that I want to do a story on. I have the monster. I don't have the story yet. So yeah, I got a ghost story coming through my own thing later on this year. But probably I have a Blade Runner-esque dystopian thing as well. But probably monster-wise, I got a sea monster I want to do. I always loved those movies like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea when I was a kid, where it'd be like a huge squid or like just something that was always there, like the Loch Ness Monster stuff. I always loved that kind of stuff. So being able to tell one of those stories, I don't know if it attacks a cruise ship or an island or something that's kind of cool and fun. We need a hero to save us from this thing. I don't see a lot of those stories around, so I want to tell one of those.
Awesome.
So,
Well, do you
We
have
still
any?
got a Snoop Dogg thing coming.
Possibly. We're working on all of those things when it comes to when you see a famous person and me together and we talk about working. It's never that easy. It's
Yeah,
never that easy. It's like me, you, Amir, we can go to McDonald's and we can write a book in 2 weeks. We can come up with something.
that's a fact.
We can figure it out. When it's somebody who's famous, it's never that easy. It's
Yeah,
that the fame has to be,
yeah, he's all
reckoned with.
over.
But it's still on the board. I'm looking at it right now. And
And you have the story with Exhibit coming.
yeah, that one's Florence and Normandy. That's the next one. That's the next Zombie Love book.
Yeah,
That should probably be out around August. You should start seeing your social media feed be inundated with images of me and Exhibit, or Exhibit. He's handsomer than me and way more charismatic. At least that's what I tell him. And so that's the next Zombie Love book. But yeah, I'm trying. I may have a thing with Boom that I'm doing, and
okay.
a few other superhero things because it's been a minute since I've played in the superhero world. So I may do that for a hot second and come back to my vampires and my werewolves and my stories of life and death.
Nice, nice.
yeah,
Well, Mr. Rodney Barnes, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. These were all great answers. We are live on Facebook, YouTube. Everyone here is watching. We all appreciate it. For those of you guys, we do have plenty of Rodney Barnes material in our comic shop here. We do have Trades of Philadelphia, Monarch #1. We still have both cover A and cover B. We still have, what is it? Need a Hall, trade paperback. We have a whole lot of stuff in the store. So for those of you guys watching, just know if you want some more Rodney Barnes, we have it available here. Thank you again, Mr. Barnes, for joining in. Thank you, Amir, for helping make all this possible.
Go get it.
If you guys haven't picked up Black and
Thank
White
you.
yet, you got to hear Amir's review on the 1 in 100 podcast. Very,
Thank you.
very
Thank
good.
you. I appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Other than that, thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Barnes.
Mr. Barnes. We'll let you go about your day.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
All right. You guys take it easy. Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Alrighty.
All right.
I think that's it, right? He ends the chat. Does it? Oh, wait, wait. That's it.